The rain had eased just enough for the streets to shine, wet pavement reflecting the neon glow from inside the converted warehouse where the tech pitch event was already underway. Cameron Wright pulled his coat tighter and stepped through the side entrance. His jeans were damp at the cuffs. The company hoodie he wore was plain, no logos, just comfortable. In one hand he carried a plain black notebook, the kind with no branding, no sticker, no flair. Inside, a crowd buzzed with polished ambition, founders rehearsing taglines, investors sipping wine from plastic cups, interns huddled around power strips. Nobody looked at him twice until he stepped too close to the registration table. "You can't be back here," said a young woman with an iPad and high heels she clearly wasn't used to. Cleaning staff was already through. "You need to use the back exit." Cameron blinked once. "I'm not it." But she was already turning to another arriving guest, smiling wide again. Someone in a suit. He didn't argue. Just quietly stepped back. Still and watching. The notebook remained closed in his hand. Cameron moved toward the wall, standing near a stack of unused folding chairs. From there, he had a clear view of the stage. A startup founder in a tailored gray jacket was nervously pitching a platform that tracked employee efficiency through mouse movements and keystroke data. Investors nodded. Some took notes. One man laughed at a joke that wasn't funny. The woman at the registration table kept glancing his way. Eventually, she whispered something to a nearby event coordinator. That man, a stocky guy in a branded fleece vest, approached with a clipboard and forced smile. "Hey buddy, this part of the venue's closed to staff. I'm gonna need you to leave unless you've got a name on the list." "I'm just here to watch," Cameron said evenly. Not really how this works. Guests came with invites. Investors got badges. You don't have either." Cameron didn't respond. He didn't look away either. "You with catering?" the man asked, softer this time. "Or custodial?" "No," Cameron said. His tone was neutral. Controlled. The man shifted awkwardly. "Okay, but we still can't have loitering. There's a back door I can show you." Cameron nodded once. "All right." He followed the man halfway down the hallway before stopping. "You'll want to tell the MC," Cameron said, "that the lead investor hasn't checked in yet." The man blinked. "What?" "Tell her." Cameron Wright. Ascend Capital. Then he turned, leaving the man standing speechless in the hallway. The man didn't move right away. Cameron's name didn't mean anything to him, not yet. But something in the way it was said stuck. Calm, like someone used to holding a room. By the time he returned to the registration desk, the woman with the iPad was mid-sentence with another guest. He leaned down and whispered, "Hey, that guy?" Said he's Cameron Wright. Ascend Capital. She froze. "Wait, Cameron Wright is here? That Cameron Wright?" "I guess," he said, confused. "He just left." She didn't answer. She was already scrolling madly through the guest list. Her fingers stopped on a bolded name near the top. Cameron Wright, lead investor, Ascend Capital. The MC, a tall woman in a navy suit, was walking past. The coordinator rushed to intercept her. "Oh, we may have a problem," he muttered. Within moments, the mood shifted. Phones buzzed. Heads turned. People who had ignored Cameron before now whispered his name. He hadn't left. He was standing near the side exit reading something in his notebook, untouched by the swirl of sudden awareness growing behind him. One of the startup founders, a woman who'd been rehearsing earlier, recognized him first. Her face went pale. The MC approached him fast, apologetic smile already in place. "Mr. Wright," she said, breathless. "I am so sorry for the confusion." He looked up from the notebook, one brow raised. "I'm sure you are." Inside the venue, a nervous energy rippled across the crowd. People who hadn't noticed Cameron earlier were now glancing over with quiet urgency. Conversation stalled mid-sentence. Someone whispered, "That's him." The MC motioned toward the green room. "We've got a space set aside if you'd like to step back before we start." "I'm fine," Cameron said. "Let's just get on with it." His tone wasn't harsh. It was quiet, steady, enough to make her nod too quickly. She turned and walked him toward the stage. As he passed the folding chair stack, a few attendees moved aside, some offering polite nods they hadn't thought to before. Cameron didn't acknowledge them. He stepped up onto the platform like he'd done it 100 times, which he had. The lights above cast soft shadows on his face as he approached the microphone. The MC stepped to the front of the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, voice slightly shaky, "please welcome our lead investor and keynote speaker for this year's Founders Summit, Cameron Wright, managing partner at Ascend Capital." There was applause louder than expected, too eager to overcompensate. Cameron let it settle before speaking. He looked out over the crowd and said, "Interesting crowd." A small laugh rippled. "I walked in 20 minutes ago. No one asked for my name. But 2 people asked me to leave." Silence. "I get it. I wasn't wearing a suit. I didn't look like someone you expected." No one moved. No one interrupted. He waited, letting the weight of his words land. "Let's talk about what you expect and what that means." The room was still. Cameron didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. When I fund a company, he said, I look at how they handle pressure. How they treat people they don't think matter. How they act when no one's watching. He scanned the audience. The founder in the gray jacket looked away. The coordinator who'd escorted him out was frozen near the curtain. The woman at the check-in table was staring at the floor. Cameron continued. This morning, before stepping inside, I'd already committed $8 million in capital to this event. I'd already reviewed pitch decks, team bios, market analysis. I'd already made a few decisions. He held up the closed notebook. But what happened when I walked through that door gave me more data than any of your slides. Someone cleared their throat. No one laughed now. There's a culture in this space, Cameron said. It rewards polish. Not always substance. It praises confidence, but too often only from people who look a certain way. You don't even notice it anymore. A long silence followed. The kind that turns reflection into discomfort. He didn't lean into it. He let the quiet do its work. Then, I'm not here to lecture. I'm here to invest. But I invest in people, not facades. He stepped back from the mic. Let's begin the pitches. The MC hesitated for a second, then signaled to the first founder on the list. A woman in a black jumpsuit stepped onto the stage, her hands shaking slightly as she set up her slides. She glanced once at Cameron, who gave her a short nod, not encouragement, just acknowledgement. Enough. Her voice trembled at first, but steadied halfway through. A logistics platform. Real-time tracking for warehouse efficiency. Solid numbers. Clean execution. She finished without stumbling, then waited, eyes flicking to Cameron. He didn't smile. Didn't frown either. Just asked, what happens if Amazon copies it tomorrow? She blinked. We have proprietary integrations with smaller freight operators. Ones Amazon ignores. Good, Cameron said. Don't chase giants. Undermine them. She exhaled visibly. Nodded. Walked off. The next founder was less prepared, slicker slides, looser grasp of numbers. When he opened with a joke, a few people laughed. Cameron didn't. Halfway through, he glanced at the notebook in Cameron's lap, then started stumbling. We plan to pivot if needed. To what? Cameron asked, tone neutral. Something more scalable. That's not an answer. The room went even quieter. By the time the third founder came up, people were shifting in their seats, eyes moving between the stage and Cameron's still form in the front row. He hadn't moved once since he sat. Hadn't opened the notebook, but everyone knew he was still writing things down. After the fifth pitch, the MC called for a short recess. Lights came up slightly. People stood. Some stretched. Others pulled out phones, but their screens stayed mostly untouched. Everyone was watching Cameron. He stood and walked slowly toward the back of the room, past the coordinator who tried to escort him out earlier. The man opened his mouth to say something, thought better of it, and looked away. Cameron stepped into a quiet corner near the refreshments table. He poured black coffee into a paper cup and leaned against the wall. Just watching. A few feet away, two junior founders whispered nervously. That's the Cameron, right? One asked. The other nodded. He backed Arclight, Pinverge, that mental health AI startup that IPO'd. They turned to glance at him. He looked back. They quickly looked away. The woman from registration approached then, tentatively, like stepping onto thin ice. Mr. Wright, she began, her voice soft. I wanted to say, I didn't recognize you earlier, and I'm really sorry for how I acted. Cameron nodded once. You thought I was someone who didn't belong. I get that a lot. She opened her mouth, maybe to defend, maybe to apologize again. But he wasn't waiting. You'll do better next time, he said. Not a suggestion. A statement. She nodded, biting her lip. Behind them, the room was slowly shifting. People weren't laughing. They were listening. And some, just a few, were learning. The lights dimmed again. Cameron returned to his seat. The final group of founders took the stage, smaller projects, less polish, more uncertainty. The ones who hadn't gotten early meetings. The ones who were rarely taken seriously. Cameron watched all of them with the same calm intensity. No reactions. No smiles. Just quiet attention. When the last pitch ended, the MC stepped back up. We'll now open the floor to investor questions. Most looked at Cameron. He stood slowly, then walked to the edge of the stage instead of shouting from his seat. No mic, just his voice, calm and even. I have a question for all of you. He turned, facing the founders who'd already pitched. Raise your hand if you've ever been asked to explain your background more than your business. 5 hands went up, then 6, then more. Cameron turned to the room. That's not a coincidence. That's the default. No one spoke. This industry says it's about innovation. But watch how fast it locks its doors when someone unfamiliar walks in. Still no one moved. He paused, then looked directly at one of the more confident founders from earlier, the one who'd joked, the one who'd stumbled. You know what you could have asked me this morning? The man shook his head, uncertain. What brings you here? Cameron said. That's it. That's all. One human question. Then he stepped off the stage and walked back to his seat. No one had anything to add. The energy in the room had changed again. Not tense, just quiet, thoughtful. The MC stepped up, cleared her throat, and gestured to the back. We'll be taking final meetings in the breakout room. Investors, feel free to connect directly with the teams. Normally this part of the event was noisy. Founders circling, trying to catch attention. Investors making people wait, measuring who was worth their time. Not this time. Cameron stood slowly, walked past the rows of chairs without hurry. As he reached the doorway, a few founders instinctively stepped back to let him through. They weren't sure if they should speak. Most didn't. But the woman from earlier, the logistics founder, did. "Mr. Wright," she said quietly. He paused, looked over. "I appreciate the question you asked. About Amazon. It made me realize we need to tighten our supplier contracts. So, thank you." He nodded. "Keep your focus. You're closer than you think." She nodded back, stunned for a second, then turned away, her eyes sharper now. In the breakout room, Cameron didn't sit at the center table. He sat in the corner, notebook in his lap. No name tag, no assistants, just presence. Still, every founder in the room shifted their plans. Conversations halted when he looked up. He didn't call anyone over. They came to him. The first to approach was a young black founder with a nonprofit tech tool free to users but hard to scale. He looked nervous but spoke clearly. No rehearsed slogans, just need and vision. Cameron listened, asked 2 questions, both practical. Then, after a pause, he said, "You're not ready for funding." "Not yet, but email me. I'll pair you with someone who's been where you are." The founder nodded, surprised but not disappointed. It was more help than anyone else had offered all night. Next was a Ladynx engineer, visibly unsure if she even belonged in the room. Her app tracked emergency shelter data. Her demo glitched mid-sentence. Cameron didn't blink. He asked, "You built this alone?" She nodded. He handed her a business card. "Email my assistant. Tell her I said to set up a technical review. No promises, but I want our people to see this." Her eyes welled, just for a second. She turned away quickly. Pitch by pitch they came, and Cameron kept listening. Not all got a card. Not all were ready, but none were dismissed. And every founder walked away from that corner with something they didn't expect when the night began. A real conversation. By the time the breakout session ended, the room had thinned. The louder investors were already gone, off to late dinners or calls with their funds. But Cameron was still there, in the same seat, notebook still closed, watching. A few founders lingered nearby, uncertain if the door was still open. One of them, the overconfident guy from earlier, the one who had stumbled under pressure, stood with his hands in his pockets, eyes on the floor. Eventually, he walked over. "Mr. Wright," he said quietly, "I owe you an apology. I didn't handle your question well, and I didn't expect any of this." Cameron looked up, not coldly, not warmly either. "You pitched the room. Not the problem," he said. The founder nodded. "Yeah, I see that now." Cameron didn't respond right away. Then, "Come back when you know the problem better than the deck." The man nodded again and stepped away, slower this time. A few feet behind him, the young woman from the shelter app was still standing there, watching. She hadn't left. Cameron gave her the smallest of nods. "Stay at it." "I will," she said, quiet but sure. Then he stood, finally, and walked out of the room. No announcement, no final words, just a closed notebook, a quiet presence, and the echo of a different kind of authority. The building emptied slowly. Conversations spilled into the street, but they were different now, quieter, more careful. Founders talked less about funding rounds and more about how they'd shown up, how they'd looked at people, what they'd missed. Inside, the event staff cleaned up in silence. The woman from registration lingered near the coat rack, replaying her own assumptions. She didn't try to justify them anymore. In a small side room, the MC packed up her notes, staring at the name Cameron Wright printed at the top of the agenda. She'd known who he was, but she hadn't known how he was. That was different. She looked toward the corner where he'd sat for hours. The chair was empty now, but the air still felt weighted, like something had stayed behind. Across town, in a quiet apartment, Cameron placed the unopened notebook on a desk and took off his hoodie. He hadn't written a single word all night. He didn't need to. He'd seen what he came to see. The next morning, just after sunrise, Cameron sat on his balcony with a black coffee in hand. No emails, no meetings yet, just quiet. His phone buzzed once. A text from his assistant. Press is asking if you want to issue a statement about last night. Cameron stared at the message for a long second, then typed back, "No statement. Let the room do that." He set the phone down and looked out over the city. At that same moment, across town, the founder of the logistics startup was already at her co-working space, tightening supplier terms just like she said she would. The young woman with the Shelter app was pulling an all-nighter debugging her code. And the overconfident guy, he was rereading his own pitch, realizing how little of it answered the real questions. Nobody had posted photos. No one had gone viral. But people were talking. Not about his name. About what he'd said. About what they'd done. About what they hadn't seen, until it was right in front of them. And that was the point. By the end of the week, quiet conversations were still spreading. A junior associate at a VC firm brought up the event during a Monday debrief. "We should rethink how we vet founders, or how we greet guests." Her manager shrugged. "You talking about that investor story?" She nodded. "Yeah, him." He paused, then said, "Let's make sure it doesn't happen here." Elsewhere, a small founder Slack group started a thread titled, "Who else got humbled this week?" No names were dropped, but everyone knew what it referred to. One reply read simply, "He didn't have to say much. That's what got me." And at the startup incubator downtown, someone printed a quote and pinned it above the whiteboard. "You pitched the room, not the problem." Nobody signed it, but they knew. Cameron's name never needed to be mentioned. The lesson had legs now. Weeks passed. The event faded from headlines it never made. But the memory lingered, in the way founders showed up to pitch, in how staff handled nameless guests, in the pause that now followed first impressions. Cameron never spoke publicly about it. No tweets. No interviews, no panels. He just kept doing what he always did, showing up, quietly deciding who got a second look and who didn't. But now, people met his gaze differently. Not out of fear, but awareness. One evening, he sat across from a young founder over coffee. She had nothing to pitch yet. No prototype. Just an idea and a little edge in her voice. "You've been told you don't fit," Cameron said. She nodded. "Good," he replied. "Means you're not copying anyone." She smiled, and he smiled back, just a little. Not because she flattered him, not because she recognized him, but because she didn't assume. And that was enough.